fellowship you are having around the table, but I need to start the program on time so that you will have enough time to meet, ask the questions necessary, and also to meet with the chief guest for a few minutes after the program. Let me welcome you first on behalf of the World Trade Council for the February monthly event, which is sponsored by right here Barco, Grasshopper and ICM and the US Department of Commerce in association with the International Business Student Association, the students who help us run this program. And I repeatedly say it's in the history of any council in the country or in the world that students take the initiative to help run a professional program. So this has remained for 40 years. The most important strategic alliances with the private sector and the public sector in centric to development of the next generation managers. So I want to personally, as a professor and chairman of the World Trade Council, thank every one of you who support the students. So if you need research studies, talk to them or tell me. For country studies, if you are interested in it. That's a part of the curriculum. If you are interested in internships. You heard from President Bardo the importance of student engagement for economic development and business development of the state. So I don't need to reiterate. So most important is any support that you give to the students is most appreciated by the business community and the university. Today is a program which you all wanted to know more about how the largest trade agreement in the history of the 21st century is going to help you to expand exports. So we are going to hear from the specialists for the US Department of Commerce. They have done the best to get the most important agreement signed by so many countries, and it's left to us to implement it and get maximum use out of it. I'm not going to talk about that. AJ is going to introduce the program. Mr. AJ Anderson, the US Department of Commerce representative in Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, to introduce the speaker. Now we have made some policy decisions today at the World Trade Council Executive Board meeting. And our Vice Chairman and Treasurer is happy to put it in accounting terms because he is a senior partner of Grant Thornton than a professor, he says. So, Dan, it's all yours to explain.
Thank you, Bob. There's just a couple things I was going to discuss with you. One is, as Dharma mentioned, students do a lot of the work behind the scenes here. They're not paid. They come and go, as you know. Students are not permanent positions, and we found it become increasingly difficult to invoice people when they come to the meetings and ask to be invoiced. So we're going to ask that if you would either pay when you make your reservations or pay when you show up at the door and not ask to be invoiced. It's just made it very difficult for the students to keep track of those, to do the invoices, keep track of when they're paid, and etc. So I'm going to ask for that inconvenience on your part to just do that, if you can remember that. We'll announce this for the next 2 or 3 meetings too, so to remind people there. So there is an ATM and down the hall, I understand, so if you end up here and you forgot and you need some cash, I think we can help you out there. We do take checks also, so hopefully that's not too big of an inconvenience, but it will help us an awful lot with our limited resources that we have. The second thing is we're obviously a not-for-profit organization, and we just try to cover our expenses, and with increased costs of meals and the social hour and all, we're going to raise prices $5 to a basic fee of $30 for a meal. It would challenge you to find somewhere else in Wichita you can go to get a nice meal, drinks for an hour, and wine at your dinner, plus a fabulous program for $30. So hopefully you don't find that too too extravagant. Again, we're just trying to cover costs. So just wanted to announce that to you. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You don't clap for fee increases.
Thanks, Dan. Because the more you help me, he'll ask less questions as the treasurer. To get his signature on approval of accounts is very difficult. He'll ask all the questions. What do you expect when you steal a part of the grand count, right? So please help. This is very important for the students. It's important. It will relieve Cheryl from calling you. It will help me from sidetracking and calling you for accounts to balance our monthly statements and year statement rather than plan for the future, the sustainability committee, which is crucial to continue for the next 40 years. Thank you very much. Now today's program is the responsibility of A.J. Anderson, who is an ex-official member of the Board of Directors, as the representative from the U.S. Department of Commerce. So A.J. will introduce the program with his role, how he can help you, as well as introduce the speaker and the program. A.J., thank you.
Before I go ahead and start getting into what my office is and what we do for a few minutes, before I get going on that, one of the things that clients ask me all the time when I go out to see them is, do you have any money? No, I don't have any money. But actually, there are two sources of money for exporters right now. Kansas Global Trade Services, they have an export accelerator grant right now. And if any of you know Karen Page with Kansas Global Trade Services, and you live within a 10-county area around Wichita, they do have money available to help exporters go ahead and expand their markets. But also, the state of Kansas has what is called the STEP grant, which are federal funds that are provided by the Small Business Administration. And we have April Zhang here tonight from the state of Kansas, and she's going to take just a few minutes to go ahead and let people know about that and how they can take advantage of it.
Thank you, AJ. Good evening. My name is April Jiang. I'm with International Trade Services under Kansas Department of Commerce. And I also like to, on behalf of Kansas Department of Commerce, to welcome Ms. Catrice Kelly. And thank you for coming to Kansas to introduce this very important subject, TPP. I think it will be a great night for us. Thank you very much. Come all the way from Washington, D.C. And so for tonight, I'm going to spend about 5 minutes to talk about Kansas Department of Commerce. And together with AJ's introduction, we actually got 3 grants that can provide money for you guys. Please spread the word out. And but first of all, as a state agency, the Kansas International Trade Service work hand in hand with AJ's team, the U.S. Department of Commerce. And together, our goal is to help Kansas company to do business in foreign markets. So together, we provide individualized counseling and expertise on how to expand the export market. We provide help in finding answer to the exporting. We provide help in accessing companies' export readiness, and we provide help to explain export process. We also provide help to do the market research. On top of that, we also provide grants to directly help reducing companies' financial burden when they try to do exporting service, exporting business. So tonight I'm going to mention 2 grants and one very important date to you guys. First of all is KITSAP. KITSAP, K-I-T-S-A-P, stands for Kansas International Trade Show Assistance Program. And this program is giving away real money for a company to use the money to go to a foreign country to exhibit their product in a foreign trade show. And we all understand one of the best ways to expand to international market is be there, attend a trade show, exhibit your product, because in a trade show, you'll be able to test the water, and then you'll be able to meet with potential client, and also as well as keep relationship with the old clients. However, trade show is very expensive. A lot of small, medium-sized companies is not able to go there just because of the money issue. So that's why we have KITSAP, Kansas International Trade Show Assistance Program. We would like to reduce and help out companies' finance so that I'm able to go to those trade shows. And it is very easy. Companies should, before you go to the trade show, you apply for approval of using KITSAP. And then go to exhibit a product in that foreign trade show and come back, ask for reimbursement. And the reimbursement is 1/2 of the company's eligible direct expense, direct trade show expense. For example, trade show registration, trade show booth, product transportation fee, those kind. And up to $3,500 per show. And each company maximum can have 7,000 reimbursement per year, which means you can use 2 or 3 times a year. And KITSAP is Kansas Commerce signature product, signature program. So that's a lot of, I saw a lot of companies sitting in the audience actually been using KITSAP. And we have lots of testimony from them that if not because of KITSAP, they will not be able to achieve their international business as of today. So that's KITSAP. The next grant I'd like to introduce is STEP that AJ just mentioned. The background of the STEP grant is a partnership between U.S. Commercial Service, Small Business Administration, and Kansas Department of Commerce and Kansas Department of Agriculture. So I have to explain this, mention this background, but however, you don't need to understand or remember it at all. You only need to remember there are money for you to use. So STEP grant, just like KITSAP, is money to give to the company, but it's for exporting. The STEP grant, STEP actually stands for State Trade and Export Promotion. So it covers more area than just trade show. So you can use STEP grants money to do export training. For example, if you go to Kansas Global Trade Service, usually will have some workshop. You can use STEP grants money to attend those workshops. Any training opportunity, you can apply for STEP grants money to go to those workshops. So eventually like free. You can also use STEP money to attend trade shows. However, at this moment, they're only limited to 2 shows. That is Farnborough Air Show and Hanover Message. And we still have opening for a company to apply to go to those 2 shows. And you can also use STEP money to go to trade mission. And there are several trade missions that is held by Department of Agriculture, and they are open for application. And last but not least, actually I like that the most, is you can use STEP money to do exporting market research, and basically use STEP money to use STEP money to use U.S. Department of Commerce program. For example, U.S. Department of Commerce program, GoKey, Partner Match, and those programs cost a little bit of money, some like $500 to $800, depends. But however, you can use STEP grants money to use GoKey, so eventually it becomes free for you to use GoKey. I have flyer here with me for KISAP and STEP brand. Anyone would be interested or you'd like to take a flyer for someone else, please come see me and I'll be more than happy to explain it to you. And then, lastly, is the important date I'd like to introduce to you. It's called Kansas International Trade Day. As the state official economic development agency, and with the globalization as the future of the trend, Kansas Department of Commerce thinks it's time to take the leadership to promote exporting. So one action to do that is we are holding Kansas International Trade Day seminar to educate and also recognize exporting business. And so we had the International Trade Day first time last year, and it was a great success. And this year we're going to do it on June 22nd in Topeka at Washington University. So please remember that date. It's a one-day program, and with education, we will talk about exporting 101, how do you do market research, what are the logistic issues you need to be aware when you're doing the exporting. And for recognition, we invite past Exporter of the Year award winner and then current year's Exporter Award finalists to talk about their successful story. And that's really a very interesting and very practical information for people to take away. So that's our 5 minutes about the Kansas Department of Commerce. And if you have any question, we are a team of 3 people, Randy, Lou, and me. So just give us a call and we'll be more than happy to do the individualized consultation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, April. Before I go ahead and introduce our keynote, I'm just going to talk a few minutes about who I am and what I do. A lot of you here in the room already know who I am and what I do, but for those that don't, my name again is A.J. Anderson. I'm with the U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the United States Department of Commerce, and I office right here in Wichita. So I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help you. I don't have any money, but for the services that I do provide, that there's a cost associated. Keep in mind that the state of Kansas has money, and Kansas Global Trade Services has money, and they will go ahead and help pay for some of the services that I provide. The primary focus, goal of the commercial service is to help companies find agents, reps, and distributors in foreign markets for your products and your services. We have offices all over the country. We have personnel in about 60 different countries around the world, usually co-located in the U.S. embassies and consulates. Where we do not have people on the ground, I usually have State Department personnel that I can turn to try to help you out with whatever need that you might have. The things that we go ahead and offer companies, partner search. If you're not willing to go ahead and travel overseas, but you're interested in finding a partner in a foreign market, we can have our personnel that cover your particular industry sector in that market, reach out to their contacts in the market, try to find appropriate contacts for you, and provide a report with those that are interested in working with you. If you're willing to go ahead and travel to that foreign market, we'll go ahead and do everything I just mentioned, but in addition, we'll go ahead and set up face-to-face meetings for you. We can arrange your transportation, we can arrange an interpreter, arrange your hotel, then you do a debriefing with the U.S. officer after those meetings to make sure that they're on target and make sure they meet your needs. If you're just needing country research, if you go to export.gov and look up Country Commercial Guide, there are 100+ page reports on virtually every country where we have a presence, telling you about the political situation, the economic situation, the products that are in demand in those markets, and how to best sell into those markets and get paid, and things like that. If you sell to foreign governments, we can help you advocate for your company on behalf of your company versus a foreign competitor. So if you're selling to the government of Spain and you have a competitor from Australia, we'll go ahead and advocate on your behalf for them to go ahead and buy the US made product. Other things that we can do, if you have a company that's contacted you and they want to go ahead and be your distributor, but you don't know anything about them, I can go ahead and contact our foreign office, see if they know anything about that company, and report back to you. If you're looking at entering into a long-term relationship with a foreign company as your distributor, you know, a 3-5 year relationship, we can do an in-depth investigation on that company and provide you feedback about whether we think you should or should not do business with that company. We have our people at foreign trade shows where you can go ahead and sign up and meet with them at those trade shows and get a briefing about what they think the prospects are in the market for your products. If you have an overdue receivable in a foreign market, we can't strong arm them. We're not a collection agency, but we can go ahead and contact that foreign company from the embassy in country and try to encourage them to go ahead and pay you. There are just a number of different things that we can do to help companies as well. There are companies here in the room where I've helped do things for them that are just out of the ordinary. So anything that is export related, where you need some help to enter the market, expand in the market, or overcome some obstacle from keeping you doing business in that foreign market, that's when you should go ahead and contact us. That's what we try to help with. I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker for tonight. She is a U.S. Commerce Department employee as well. She offices in Washington, D.C. Her name is Catrice Kelly. She's an international trade specialist in the Office of Trade Policy and Analysis. Catrice has over 16 years of experience in the International Trade Administration and has spent the last 10 years working on market access issues. She's responsible for market access component, government procurement negotiations for the WTO, agreements on government procurement, and regularly participates in multilateral negotiations as a member of the U.S. team. She also coordinates industry positions on product-specific rules of origin for U.S. foreign trade agreements and responds to inquiries on rules of origin generally or for previously negotiated U.S. free trade agreements. She has also successfully handled negotiating tariff levels for industrial goods on foreign trade agreements for Singapore, Australia, and Panama. She earned her bachelor's in mass communications and her master's of arts in administration and management. So I'll go ahead and turn the podium over to Catrice Kelly.
Thank you, AJ. Okay, so just to start from the beginning, what is the TPP? The TPP is a trade agreement between the United States and 11 other countries in the Asia-Pacific region. These countries represent, well, expected by 2030, these countries will represent 3.2 billion potential middle-class consumers. So one of the reasons why we negotiated TPP is for the potential that this region holds. And this agreement is the United States' way of leveling the playing field for our export. The United States is a very open and transparent market, whereas many of the TPP parties may not be. So TPP is already important to, the TPP countries are already important to the U.S. economy. These countries represent 3.1 million jobs, 1.1 million jobs in services. These jobs supported by these goods exports are up to TPP market by 20%. And TPP countries already account for 43% of all jobs supported by goods exports. So basically, these countries, these countries already support over 4 million U.S. jobs before we even have the trade agreement implemented. And this agreement is also very important to exports. If you'll notice in the chart I have it there, exports to these countries are around over $700 billion. That's up 59% since 2009. And the TPP countries already represent 45% of what we export to the world. Now, You may have, well, I'll get to that in the slide. TPP represents new things that we haven't done in other agreements. TPP has enforceable labor and environmental standards. We have new standards for digital freedom. And it's the first time we've ever had an agreement that covers state-owned enterprises and a chapter on small business. So this is just a list of the things that are covered in the TPP. You'll notice this is a really, well, it's 30 different chapters, and it covers everything from definitions all the way down to regulatory coherence, small business development, dispute settlement. So we try to cover a broad array of things that will affect exporters with this agreement. With the TPP partners, you will notice that some of those are countries where we already have trade agreements. The countries highlighted in orange are where we have new trade agreements. One thing that I want to mention is that if you currently use one of our existing FTAs, those FTAs will still exist. So if you currently use the Peru FTA and that works for you, you can continue using the Peru FTA. NAFTA, all those agreements will still exist, you can still use them. There are a few exceptions where the TPP provisions will sort of replace that agreement, but it's in very selected areas.
So how will the free trade agreement with Mexico, how is TPP different than the free trade agreement with Mexico, for example, or Canada?
Canada and Mexico, well, one area where TPP is going to replace provisions that we have with NAFTA are in government procurement. So the government procurement chapter for NAFTA will basically be exchanged for TPP once TPP is implemented with all the products. TPP also has stronger labor and environment provisions. There aren't really any labor and environment provisions in NAFTA, so those are new. The provisions on small business. So it's kind of all over the agreement. There are kind of nuggets throughout that are stronger than what we had in NAFTA. Did you have a specific?
Well, I guess the specific question would be as far as documentation, clearance through customs and stuff like that. Will that still be the same with Canada and Mexico that it is now?
If you are using NAFTA, yes. You can still use a NAFTA certificate of origin. You can still use all that stuff. They're still working on implementing how exactly we're going to implement TPP in terms of documentation that you'll need. If you were to look at TPP, it does give you a list of elements that you'll need when you do like a certification. But if NAFTA works for you, you can still keep using it.
Will this make it any easier to import stuff into Mexico? Believe it or not, Mexico is one of the hardest countries in the world to import stuff into. Will this make it any easier to do that?
It might. It should. It should. Let's hope.
How?
I hope, and I haven't actually looked to see the exact differences between NAFTA and TPP, but it should make it easier in terms of the documentation requirements. And what we've tried to do, we've had 20 years between NAFTA and TPP. So we've kind of seen what works and what doesn't work. So we tried to incorporate the things that worked into TPP and got rid of the things that didn't work. So the hope is that it's easier for you to get things into Mexico using TPP.
And believe me, I don't want to put you on the spot here with Mexico, but with Mexico, we have a lot of customers in Mexico, and they rely on us to build parts for them. And they're down, and we're shipping a part in, and it will get hung up in customs.
Yeah.
We can get parts into Russia faster than we can get parts into Mexico. And I don't know, there's a lot of freight brokers here and stuff like that, and that is one thing for an exporter. If we could service our customers in Mexico better by getting them the parts that they need when their equipment is down, that would help us a lot.
One of the things that TPP does have, it has an Amazon Express delivery. And so there are requirements in the agreement about how long it's supposed to take things to process through customs, especially if you're using an express delivery.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. because, I mean, if we ship systems into Mexico, we seem to have an okay time with that, but I mean, as far as parts, spare parts or stuff like that, if our customers' equipment is down, I mean, we have customers, as I said, there for a week or longer when their equipment is not even running.
Actually, if you
We
get
have a
something
hard
with
time getting them through customs.
actually, if you get something across the border and it gets stuck in Mexican customs, or any market for that matter, that's when you could go ahead and give me a call. And I can go ahead and contact our offices in Mexico, and they will go ahead and contact customs on your behalf and try to move it through.
And with TPP, we have put specific time frames in as to how long things are supposed to, how long it's supposed to take things to process through customs. So hopefully once the agreement is implemented, things will actually work and go a lot smoother getting into Mexico. One more thing to highlight just with this slide, 98% of industrial and consumer goods going into the TPP parties are going to be duty-free immediately. So basically, for this agreement, we've got a really good deal on tariffs. So good, in fact, there it is. So here's a sector breakdown of the share, basically, of U.S. exports that we've gotten immediately free into the five new TPP markets. So you'll notice that basically we got over 90% of all U.S. products are going into these 5 new countries immediately duty-free. That's pretty good. Now, TPP, along with tariffs, also tackles other non-tariff issues, and I'm going to go deeper into those later, but one thing to highlight is one set of rules of origin so that all countries can focus on one set of rules of origin. One thing with our existing FTAs, we have a bit of a spaghetti bowl. If you look at all of our different FTAs, we have rules that are all slightly different with TPP. One set of rules, 12 countries.
Patrice, question. Regarding the rules of origin, for the countries that are members of TPP and have their own regional agreements, will TPP rule of origin supersede those, or again, does it depend on which certificate of origin you're giving? If you're going to do U.S. Peru or you're going to do TPP, will the rules of origin vary? Is there more of a benefit? Because that's we have more legislation, makes it a bit more complex. You know, which one you should be following.
So, the U.S. So, for example, if the U.S. Peru, if you claim that, you use the U.S. Peru rules of origin. If you're claiming it under TPP and you're still going from the U.S. to Peru, you use the TPP rules of origin. There is no connection between TPP and these other countries' sort of third-party agreements. So there isn't any sort of cross-agreement, linkage. TPP is also our first trade agreement that has a chapter on small business. One of the biggest things that TPP gives small businesses is transparency. So it definitely gives you, it's a way to save time, money, greater certainty. We're trying to reduce costs. Right there, goods must be released from customs within 48 hours to the extent possible. It's right there in TPP. We have a chapter on regulatory coherence. So we try to work on ways that we can have transparency in our regulatory systems across all the parties. We've also tried to improve our IPR regimes so that all of the countries are following a similar standard on IPR. So you don't have to fear that your product will be stolen once it gets into another country. All right, specifically on rules of origin and customs. Now, as AJ said in the introduction, I work on rules of origin. I worked on the rules of origin chapter in TPP. One of the biggest things the industry requested when it came down to TPP was accumulation. They wanted to be able to accumulate across all of the different TPP parties. And so we do have accumulation in this agreement. So you can source your products from all over the TPP region and still get origin.
So with regards to industries that require a government certification for their product, what are your efforts for global harmonization to recognize a specific standard, let's say from a European standard that is that exceeds the United States government's standard for a safer product to promote safety and harmonization across multiple countries?
We're not there yet. I'm gonna be honest, we're not there yet. We are negotiating a trade agreement with the European Union, the trade and TTIP.
TTRP.
Yeah. Trade and investment partnership agreement, and one of the focuses in that agreement is regulatory coherence, and then also getting the EU and the US sort of on the same field where we will accept each other's certifications and standards. Now, of course, that agreement is under negotiation, so it takes time, but that's something we're working on because we know that that's a big issue. If you are sending your products around the world and you have to meet 50 different standards that are all slightly different, that's an extra cost.
Thank you.
So, e-commerce.
I have a question.
Sure.
On this pages, they say something about textiles. Does it apply for equipment?
Say that one more time.
Here,
Mm-hmm.
it refers just to textiles.
Yes.
Will this apply to equipment?
No.
Also, I heard that it won't be in effect till July. Is it true?
Actually, we don't have a date yet as to when the agreement will go into effect. On the, okay, so one of the things that we passed out were, we passed out a few different things. One of them was a state fact sheet on Kansas and basically the potential opportunities for Kansas. But I know some of the other tables got 4-page opportunity reports, and those reports sort of highlight the potential benefits for TPP and highlight some of the non-tariff areas where TPP basically will help those industries. So for the textile one, we're not sure yet when TPP will go into effect. So
I'm more interested in the equipment part.
the
That's my industry.
textile one only covers textiles and apparel. So
What about the equipment?
the equipment that we would classify that as machinery.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Will be in effect to apply for this, so we can export more, customers overseas won't have to pay duties?
Textile equipment is included in the agreement. TPP covers all products. There aren't any products that are excluded from this agreement. So,
Agricultural equipment.
yes. Let me go back for a second. So, agricultural equipment, we would put that in with machinery, and we would also put the textile equipment in with machinery. And so, 96% of those products will be duty-free to the new TPP markets. If you have the sector report for machinery or for textiles, you'll see an additional breakdown for the 5 new markets, so you can see exactly how it's breaking down.
So, that's part of the implementation schedule for what's going to be duty-free or not. Is that finalized, or is it just a draft of what's going to be duty-free at the date that the agreement goes into effect?
Those are all finalized.
Okay. So if we were to look up the implementation schedules, kind of to her point, it would say if it was HTS classification XYZ, that's what's established, we can kind of go off of that for forecasting purposes.
Yes.
Okay.
All of the text in the agreement is available on USTR's website, ustr.gov. They have a big section on TPP, and you can go through and find your tariff if you have the HTS number. The Department of Commerce has another tool, the FTA tariff tool, that lets you go into, basically we've done all the work for you. So you can go in with your specific HS number and not have to scroll through hundreds of pages of a PDF file. But it's not ready yet. It's another one. All right, so back to e-commerce. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are not in favor of this agreement. downsides.
Well, I'm here to give you the upsides. I think with any trade agreement, there's always concern about job loss. With TPP, the potential, as with any agreement, is there for that. The hope is that that won't happen. You know, the hope is that with TPP, that we will open up these markets and more of our exports will come from the U.S., go to this region, and create more jobs here. So I'm not going to talk about downsides. Okay. So TPP promotes a free and open internet for the free flow of information, ideas, and text. So basically, there are rules against forced localization of servers and data, servers or data. And these countries are really obligated to ensure the free flow of data. So there's a real concern as part of this agreement that countries would have said, okay, well, in order for you to you get your data into our country, you need to have your servers in the country. We don't believe in that whole cloud thing. And it also criminalizes theft of trade secrets, even in cyberspace, and it protects your copyrights on digital products, which is a big deal. Okay? Like I said, with IPR, it protects your patents, copyrights, and your trademarks, and it gives you fair access to the legal system if you do have a violation, and there are criminal penalties for trade theft. And we've had questions before about standards. There's a chapter in the agreement on technical barriers to trade, which are basically standards. And so it tries to reduce the unnecessary testing and certification, and makes it so that U.S. That if you're meeting the U.S. standard, then hopefully you will meet the standard in all the TPP countries. It also has sector-specific commitments. So, like it listed there, medical devices, pharmaceuticals. That way, it aligns the standards across the TPP region, and it requires the countries to allow U.S. companies to participate on non-discriminating for a basis of developing standards and technical regulations. What that really means is that when a country decides they are ready to change their standards, there's a comment period, and you can chime in and you can say, hey, this standard doesn't work for me. And hopefully the country will listen and change the standard, or not change the standard.
Going back one slide,
Yeah.
is there a legal interpretation between the definition of intellectual theft and data mining? And the reason why I ask is that there is a particular part of the globe that if you attempt to put a product into their region, likes to ask for supporting documentation over and above what would be deemed normal. And it can be shown that at times they may use that information to their benefit for various industries within that country.
Okay. I dare say it's a big country that starts with a C and ends with an A.
Could be. I cannot confirm nor deny that.
It is a problem that we are aware of. Tech transfer is a big problem, and I know that it's something that businesses are really concerned about. You know, if they sell their product in this country, you know, are they going to have it taken? So yeah, it's a problem we're aware of. I'm not sure. I don't think there is a definition or a distinction in TPP on the two, but I can ask our IPR folks and get you an answer. Okay, labor. So basically, the biggest thing with TPP TPP is that it has enforceable labor standards. And this way, all of these TPP parties, now this is a big deal for a lot of the TPP countries because they just didn't have this. And so one of the big things is that it prohibits child labor and forced labor. And it requires acceptable conditions for work, including minimum wage, hours of work, safety conditions, work conditions. So that was a big deal for a lot of these countries. And it also has new environmental standards. Labor and environment are areas where TPP, let's say for NAFTA, these will sort of replace what's in NAFTA because NAFTA really doesn't have much on labor and environment. TPP will replace what's in NAFTA with stronger provisions. Okay, now going back to the sector reports I put on some of the tables. I highlighted some of the sectors where, highlighted I think 6 sectors where were the number 1 sort of exports for Kansas on the industrial goods side. So chemicals, spent a lot of time with person of coke. And so just to highlight, I'm not sure if everybody, which sector reports how they sort of ended up being distributed, but this sort of tells you what happens with chemicals. And if you notice here with TPP, under chemicals, 97% are going in duty-free, 100% in Japan, and almost 90% with all the other countries. We also highlight where the current tariffs are. So you can see, like with Vietnam, the average tariff is 35% on chemicals. That's crazy. So with TPP, we're going to get rid of those tariffs, and we're just going to try to make it so you can export more chemicals to these countries. Similar for ICT equipment. Machinery. Now for us, machinery is sort of a broad term, so that's where you mentioned the textile machinery, it's where your construction equipment, your agriculture equipment, we classify that as a general sort of machinery. And it's the same sort of thing. 96% of machinery will be duty-free in these markets, 100% to Japan, and over 90%, except for Brunei, for all the other countries. Metals and ores is also a big export from Kansas, and same thing. Over 94% is going to be immediate duty-free, and with the exception of New Zealand, almost 90% in New Zealand and Malaysia, 90%, over 90% in all the other markets. Textiles and apparel. U.S. textiles industry is sensitive to imports, in particular with doing an agreement with Vietnam. The U.S. is the single largest exporter of textiles. We're doing an agreement with the second largest exporter of textiles. So textiles was a very unique agreement was a very unique issue to handle in this agreement, just because the sensitivities in the U.S. market with and negotiating with Vietnam. Oh yeah, and transportation equipment. I know that I'm talking to AJ. We've got a lot of folks who make transportation equipment here. So, and for us, transportation equipment is basically planes, boats, and trains. Now, one thing about planes, boats, and trains, in particular planes, they're already pretty much duty-free into all of these markets. So TPP might not get you any into tariffs, but in the other issues that TPP covers, that's where you get your bang for your buck, whether it's IPR, standards, issues like that. And then of course, services. The U.S. is the largest exporter of services, and TPP gives great benefits to those, gives additional access to U.S. exporters of services. Now, I got a couple of questions earlier about where exactly we are right now with TPP. So this is our time frame, and this is all laid out by the Trade Promotion Authority Act that was passed earlier this year. So that agreement basically laid out a set of things that must happen. So we've reached the point now where TPP has been signed, and we're at the point where we are waiting, well, there we go. It's been signed, and we're waiting for a report to come out from the U.S. ITC. Now, after that happens, then the legislation would be submitted to Congress, and then they would vote on it. So we reached the point now where Congress will soon have to act. Here's a commercial for me and AJ. So I'm part of the Department of Commerce, also the International Trade Administration. I work in industry and analysis, so we do industry and issue experts, and we also provide data. AJ is part of the U.S. Export Assistance Centers. Yes.
Commercial service.
Commercial service. And another part of us does the implementation and enforcement of the trade agreements. So that's the Department of Commerce. And that's it. So. Any more questions?
Assume it passes, what's the agency or what's the enforcement for compliance? If I want to sue the Sultan of Brunei, how do I do that? For trading, something like that.
Okay, so at the Department of Commerce, in our enforcement and compliance unit, we have an office called the Trade Agreements, Negotiations, and Compliance. And one of the things that they do is they're sort of the first step you take before you sue the Sultan to basically get your issue resolved. And they have a whole website set up where you can go in and sort of find out first. The first step is to find out if your issue is something that a trade agreement covers and something that we can actually say, hey, we can make this country stop doing it. Because a lot of times an issue arises in a trade, well, a person has an issue and they find out that it may be wrong for them, but it's legal. So the first step is to make sure that what they're doing is actually illegal and against either a trade agreement or a WTO agreement or anything along those lines.
Are there fines or what penalties are applied?
Depends on the issue. So like there are penalties built in for some of the rules of origin and stuff, but it depends on the issue.
One of the very interesting statements I saw in your presentation was customs clearance essentially within 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of challenges that companies may have, small, medium, large, is the government interaction aspect and that line of anti-corruption or bribery. When there's an agreement that goods will be free within 48 hours, it kind of raises a red flag immediately. So a lot of companies say, how does that get done? If today, getting into Vietnam, I build in 6-7 days of delay because that's the way the government works for customs clearance.
Yeah.
So if there's an agreement saying within 48 hours our shipments will be cleared, how is that feasible? What's the reassurance that an importer or an exporter can have that there isn't going to be that blurred line of compliance to meet that, what's stated as a public requirement for 48 hours clearance? That's a very specific question. But.
Yeah. Well, I guess the biggest hope is that, well, first, I think the big thing to realize with a country like Vietnam, what else is built into the agreement is capacity building to make sure that Vietnam, and let's say Malaysia too, and Peru in some cases, have the ability to actually do what they said they're going to do. So that's one of the areas where we're working with Vietnam to ensure, they say they agreed to do 48 hours, they're going to do 48 hours. And there are also transition periods for certain issues in the agreement. I don't think that's one of the issues where Vietnam had a transition period, but I have to check it out.
So along those same lines, 48 hours, and 48 hours is fantastic.
It is.
But there's always but, right?
Yeah. And that's for where possible.
Our customers want the parts in their hand in 48 hours. And there's a lot of countries, including Russia, and I always bring Russia up because people think that it's hard to do business with Russia. We can get parts in our customers' hands in 48 hours going to Russia. It's very hard to do that in Mexico. And maybe in other parts of the world, I know that it's hard to do that, especially in Mexico. And so, you know, I guess this is the challenge for you folks, I guess, is, you know, 48 hours isn't good enough. You know, we need the parts in their hands in 48 hours because their machines are down, and sometimes our machines are running their whole plant, and it's costing them thousands of dollars an hour, and they don't want to wait 3 or 4 days to get that part. So anyway, that's just a comment that I have to make, that 48 hours is great. That's better than what we got in a lot of places, but it's still not good enough for us to do, for us to service our customers like we need to service them around the world. So, okay, that's just a comment. That's my first question.
Okay.
Second, and I'm not, believe me, I'm not, I think you guys are doing great things, but I'm just saying, what you're doing is great, but we need better than 48 hours.
Well, for me, it was interesting just that it's defined. There's many firsts for the TPP.
Yeah.
The fact that 12 nations would agree and put themselves to have a benchmark for performance is very interesting, and it's very enticing as a company. Think about exporting and importing and building for that. It's just seeing if that's something that can actually be done. With the different standards across the 12 different countries, they're very different.
We're gonna hope they can get done, like AJ said, if we get stuck.
My second question is, and I don't know if you did it, and it's, Kansas is very dependent on agriculture.
Yes. Yes.
And that includes, you know, agriculture products, wheat, corn, beef, stuff like that. And I don't think you covered it, and I know that's not maybe in this organization, but what is TPP doing for the agriculture products in Kansas?
Okay. One of the things that I passed out at the beginning was a fact sheet prepared by USDA on agriculture. I hope everybody.
No, you got that.
Okay. No, it was a one pager, it was purple.
There you go. There's your summary.
Unfortunately, as a Department of Commerce, we don't cover agricultural products, so I borrowed that from my friends at USDA to sort of highlight what they're doing for agriculture. I know that.
So we're going to be able to export more beef to all these countries?
Yes.
With no duties?
In time. I honestly don't.
For those countries that state that they can comply with the 48 hours, but can be shown historically not to be able to do that, what resources do you have at your disposal to be able to address those issues? And what avenues do you have to correct that?
The biggest avenues that we have is that as part of this agreement, we have committees where we will get together and we will basically discuss our various issues. Once this agreement is implemented, we will check in with each other. And one of the biggest things is we will listen to, if you have complaints or issues or problems, tell us. One of the things that happened when the Korea FTA passed was that there were a lot of issues with customs verifications, people having trouble getting their stuff cleared. And so we had to basically raise it with Korea. So it's the same sort of thing. If once TPP is implemented, if you run into problems, tell us and we will talk to them and find out what we can do to resolve it.
If you're unable to come to an agreement, what enforcement actions do you have that you can take care of the issue?
Well, there is a dispute settlement chapter in this agreement. I mean, if it got to that point, we could take it to WTO, the whole case and dispute and all that. But hopefully we have enough mechanisms in place that before we got to an actual dispute, we could resolve it.
Regarding state-owned enterprises, I think that's one of the interesting aspects of the changes to come. For example, in Vietnam and Malaysia, there's still the idea of freedom of labor unions to form, but many of those labor unions are owned and operated by the government. So
Yes.
it's kind of a unique position to be in. So is that one of the areas where there's a time frame to face? That's a culture change, really, for some of those things in terms of how will a state-owned enterprise become public and be on the same level with competing with the private sector when all that's ever been there for labor negotiations, for example, is government run?
I will have to find that out. Oh, that's tough. Anything else?
I'll set it up on a tee for you.
Okay.
Do it.
TPP has a lot of great opportunities for U.S. exporters to increase their exports. What do we as business people need to do if we want to see TPP be implemented so that we can take advantage of it?
As a government official, I can't lobby,
Well,
but.
can I make a statement then?
Call your congressman.
Yeah, you know, I really think for most people in this room are involved in exporting. TPP is a great opportunity for us to increase our exports. But for it to go into effect, Congress has got to ratify this agreement. Our elected representatives respond to us when we address them and explain how important something is to them. So government officials can't lobby. I'm a private citizen. I would encourage everybody in this room to write your elected officials, tell them why TPP is important to your company, why it will create more jobs here in the state of Kansas.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
But this is your first trip to Michigan. Yes. And you also told me that this is the most interesting
Yes.
group.
This is the biggest audience that I've talked to about TPP and the most pro-trade to get.
So I'm So don't forget us. Appreciation and recognition, Kelly, for your trade specialist, for your keynote address on Trans-Pacific Landmark Agreement to increase global exports. Thank you very much. AJ, thank you very much for organizing the program and my opening remarks. We are just about on time. Dan is looking at his watch, so he probably winked at me saying that close the meeting as early. We made the announcements, as you know, the new policy. Pay at door means business. Please pay at door. So don't allow us to mess around with the university. Next is those who have not. Cheryl, where are you? She just stepped out. The membership renewal, please make sure that you get your membership renewed so that you can be in the directory. So is advertising. Next program, March, is 6-member delegation from Japan, talking about Japan is back in business. This might be very interesting because it's, as you know, it's probably one of the largest markets for Kansas. And the US trade is among the top 5 countries. So this is something that you may want to bring your business associates. March 24. April 21 is Iraq, the new business with Iraq, with, sponsored by Textron and Beach. So you will have the information ready. May, we have a unique opportunity to recognize and honor Spirit as one of the foremost international business contributors, like Coke did last May for World Trade Week. So please mark May 12th as the most important day for World Trade Week. So other than that, I have only to say good night. Thank you very much for coming. Meeting is adjourned.